to you?
Well, first, no pressure. I I really want to extend my gratitude and just a huge prayer of thanks that I'm even able to come and speak with all of you. And just want to make sure, because it looks like everybody's frozen now.
We can hear you and see you fine.
Okay, great. So the topic is why go crazy about Kirtan? What's the big deal? Why are we doing Kirtan? Why are Bhakti retreats dedicating full days to Kirtan? And why have we been singing the same words for 500 years and longer? Like, they don't even change the words, it's all the same. And yet, and still, we keep singing it for hours and hours and days and months. And it's, in some cases, the one thing that's getting us through this global crisis. And it's the one thing that we can look forward to after the global crisis. So I thought I would talk a little bit about the miracle that is Kirtan. I would facilitate Kirtan workshops and evening chants at Bhakti yoga studios and all different kinds of yoga studios. And the first thing I would do to gauge my audience was ask how many first timers there were. And inevitably, there were quite a few first timers. And then I would ask them, okay, why? What would make you come and join into basically an interactive concert? Because at a concert, you can kind of sit back and relax and enjoy the music. And at a kirtan, inevitably at some point, you know, the leaders are looking at you and they want you to respond and sing back. And in the case of kirtan with me and my family, we are really intense about having people sing back. So it always fascinated me about why people, like, what would compel someone to go and join this interactive singing night, not knowing everything else about it. And the answers that I got was most people, even though they didn't know anything about bhakti yoga, or even if they only knew a little bit about yoga, they always said that they felt like they needed a break. They needed a reprieve. They needed some relief from their external life. They needed something to help them make it through the evening or the rest of their day. So, what I found was that people were feeling an intense disconnect from their meaning and the ultimate purpose of their lives. And then I would ask them to just sit and go with it. And we'd introduce the Mahamantra. We would just sit and sing together for 15, 20, 30 minutes. And at the end of it, these people would look completely different. Their faces would look lighter and brighter. They would look as though a weight was lifted off of their shoulders. And when I asked them how they felt, even after the kirtan, the biggest response was that they either felt lighter and freer or they felt more grounded. And some people that would come to kirtan for the first time, I would see them and they'd be crying in the middle of a kirtan, which brings me to one of my favorite things about kirtan as a spiritual practice, is that try as we might, it is pretty much impossible to hide from the transformative power of Kirtan. Once we begin singing with each other, once we begin chanting in the company of others who are enthusiastic, that Kirtan takes root deep within our hearts. And then it begins to lighten the loads and the burdens that we carry. So the biggest thing, of course, is what can we really take with us? Now, of course, we've heard this question loads of times before, but it might be a little bit more pertinent now that we are all facing a global crisis and have to actually take stock of our lives and what we're doing with our lives. So what can we take with us at the end of our lives? As much as we strive for our degrees, and we should strive for our degrees, we can't take our degree with us. As much as we vie for positions in our professions, we can't take our professions with us at the end of our lives either. Actually, we can't even take our family members with us. And we find that at the end of our lives, it is very much a solo journey. However, the spiritual advancement that we make and the inner work that we do becomes the one big factor and the one big amount of progress that we can take with us throughout our lives, beyond our lives, into whatever we've decided and think and learned comes next after this life. And for me, this is why Kirtan is so important. It is a means for us to develop our faith. It's a means for us to develop a way of prayer, especially if we are not used to it. There are loads of people who think that you have to pray a certain way, or that you have to have specific words, a specific language. Journeying through Bhakti Yoga, there is a lot of Sanskrit and not easy to pronounce, is easy to remember. And then there's Kirtan, and we have a mantra, which is distilled into basically a combination of 3 words. With those 3 words, we are able to unlock all of the magic of our spiritual existence. And it doesn't take long to memorize. And if we are unable to perfect anything else except for chanting this Hare Krishna mantra, we've done all that we need to do. There's actually nothing else left to be done. We can focus our entire spiritual practice just on these 3 words and perfecting this chanting. And that, for me, is a miracle, especially when everywhere you look, there's so many rules and regulations. Do this, but don't do that. Okay, approach God this way, but not that way. There are so many different religious traditions where you're not even privy to the name of God. Say, for instance, in the Jewish tradition, they're not allowed to call God by his name at all. It's blasphemous. And so, being brought up within the Bhakti tradition, I wind up taking for granted that we have not only one, but hundreds of names for God. We pick our favorite, we call him by it all the time. And we are taught to have that faith that as soon as we use the name of God, as soon as we call out, God's going to answer, no problem. And on the other hand, there are those that believe that you can call out all you want, God is just too busy. You've got to go through the proper channels. But here, there's one spiritual teacher. I like that he said that Bhakti Yoga is God with his guard down. we can see in so many different traditions that that there's awe and reverence and so much worshipful presence that has to be surrounded in order to even glimpse God. But here we take all of that away. We strip it all down and we say, here, God is your best friend. You go talk to him whenever you want. If you have a problem, you tell him, look, I have this problem. I need you to solve it because I can't do this on my own. So Kirtan takes all of that and puts it into a song, which works for me because in terms of japa meditation, I find that my mind will wander. I'll start the round really good, and somewhere towards the middle, there's laundry. And then I'm like, okay, don't think about the laundry, I'll bring it back. And then I'll be really good for a solid 10, 12 mantras. And then I'm trying to figure out I can open wide enough without putting WD-40, you know, the hinge loosener. And I'm like, winter just passed here, so I might need to put the oil on the window. Meanwhile, still chanting. But, and then I think to myself, oh wait, bring it back, bring it back. It's not what I was supposed to be focusing on. So when I'm in Kirtan, it gives my mind less excuses. I am focused, there's a tune, there's musical accompaniment, there are beats, there's clapping, there's dancing. There's so many things that my mind is able to focus anywhere, and somehow still I'm focused on the Maha Mantra and on Krishna. And it brings me to a place where I'm able to be so much more present in a way that I'm not able to be any other time of the day. So, what I really want to dive into is the Kirtan miracle. 500 years ago, honestly, none of us really would have been chanting and doing Kirtan at all. Kirtan was just for the upper class Brahmins, not even the middle class Brahmins, like the upper class Brahmins. If you were living in a temple, dedicated your life to serving in an ashram, then sure, maybe. Everybody else, you were kind of on your own. And then we got God as a revolutionary. And he said, why? Why should only one section of people be able to call on God? Seems like if God is everywhere and within everyone, shouldn't everybody have access? And then he decided to literally take it to the streets. He took the Mahamantra, took it out of the temples, and then began to sing and dance his way through the streets of West Bengal in India. And all of the higher ups in religious positions of power thought that he was absolutely crazy. They thought he was a lunatic. They thought it was a little bit of heresy. They thought that it shouldn't be like this. There are social stratas for a reason. They thought that everybody should stay in their lane. And if God was available to everyone, why would people need to come to them? See, now that's the problem. However, God, as our Kirtan revolutionary, said, no, it's not. This is not how it should be. There shouldn't be any social stratas. There shouldn't be any class distinctions, not when it comes to prayer. God responds if you are a fisherman. God responds if you are a priest. God responds if you are a leper. And he went singing and dancing through the streets, and he hugged lepers and cured them, did all kinds of things, and created an uproar. And many people at the time didn't like it. Basically, his advice to them was, join the party and chant anyway. And he didn't let anything stop him. So the fact that we are able to do kirtan the way we are able to do kirtan today around the world with anyone at any time, no matter what ethnicity they are, no matter what gender they are, no matter what profession they have, that is grace. And it's an amazing, amazing gift that we've been given. Fast forward now, the last time I was in South Africa was in 2009. And on the plane ride there, I was way too excited to notice anything. The passage of time, any discomfort, it didn't matter. The plane ride back, however, was a completely different story. 21 hours on a direct flight from South Africa to New York sounds like a good idea until you are on said flight. And then it was not such a good idea. It was a terrible idea. I remember at one point, the seat in front of me was empty, and I was literally kind of just banging my head against the front of the seat, wondering why I was still on a plane for so many hours. And when we landed back in New York, I remember thinking to myself, okay, there's gotta be a better way to do that. We have to do like a tour or something and country hop and have stops along the way. But I went to South Africa just for kirtan. That's it. I have found myself all around the world just for kirtan, singing the same 3 words, not changing anything, not having to put in anything special. It's going to be the same song. And it's not like anybody gets tired of it. Like, it's not like it's a surprise. Well, what's she going to sing this time? Same 3 words. But everybody is always eager to sing and chant with you. And that's the beauty of transcendental sound vibration. That's the beauty of mantra meditation. If you had a song on the radio and the song was called "The Grass is Green," and that was the extent of the lyrics, and maybe they switched up the order a couple of times, but it was just "The grass is green," it's not going to work for 500 years. I guarantee you. People are going to get tired of it after the first 24 hours. Like, it might be cool on social media, and then people will do a challenge about how to sing "The grass is green" in different locations, and they'll change their outfits and do all kinds of cool things. And then after that, nobody's going to want to hear "The grass is green" ever again. But because this Maha Mantra brings us in direct contact with our spiritual divine best friend, whether we believe it or not. And that's the thing about the Maha Mantra. It works whether we believe it or not. It's kind of like gravity. So you can say to somebody, "Hey, do you believe in gravity?" They're like, "No, I don't believe in gravity." But if you jump out the window, it's still going to work. Doesn't matter. The beauty of the holy name is that it's going to work regardless of our level of faith. So we can sing 3 words. I can go around the world. I can sing it in a different tune, but it's still going to be the same words, and we're all going to be enthused. So I went there to South Africa to sing kirtan. And I was actually comfortable the whole time on the plane. Really, even if I complained that it was 21 hours long, I wasn't like in the storage section. I wasn't cramped up with tiny seats. The leg room was great. We had food. It wasn't a big deal. I felt safe the whole time. I had family to talk to. I journaled. mostly about how long the flight was, but I still journaled. I read some books. I spent time, but I will tell you the key difference between my experience for Kirtan and the experience of our founder Acharya for the sake of Kirtan. I was not 69 years old. I was only 24. So Srila Prabhupada, our founder Acharya, at the age of 69, decided that he was going to take a trip to America, not knowing anyone, not knowing where he would stay when he got there, but just on faith that he would take the order of his spiritual teacher and spread Kirtan. So when I got to South Africa, I had a great place to stay. I was comfortable, the houses were big, everybody was really nice, people cooked, it was no problem. Everything went on perfectly. It was like I made family members instantly. However, Srila Prabhupada at 69 got on a boat, not a plane like me, but a boat for 38 days. So if I thought I was uncomfortable for 21 hours, I can't even begin to imagine over a month. We've been quarantined for over a month and everybody's going stir crazy. Nobody wants to do this anymore. But imagine now you're on a boat, you're alone, there's no one really there to care for you. There's the captain and the crew. And by the way, this was like a freight cargo ship. So it's not like there were that many other passengers. It's him and books and the crew and cargo. So he's on the boat, and to me, my 21 hours start to feel like the lap of luxury. And then not only does he come to a place where he knows no one and has no money, but he suffered seasickness. I was fine on the plane. I didn't even have motion sickness during takeoff, landing, everything was smooth. He had seasickness and 2 heart attacks. I don't know about all of you, but perhaps after the first heart attack, I probably would have said, okay, how do I turn this around and go back home? I understand there's a whole world that needs some spiritual enlivening, but they might need to get it from someone else because there are serious issues that I need to deal with. But he stayed determined. And then when he got to America, he found people that would host him. And then he came to New York, and he didn't go to the richest part of town. He went to the poorest part of town, which was really, really, really poor. And not only did he go to the poorest part of town where he encountered homeless bums and incredible intoxicated people, which is putting it lightly, you know. Sometimes you might think that the term bum is really kind of derogatory, right? But the New York homeless people, they're really bums, like aggressively so. They have a really special quality that they can be demanding and homeless and in need at the same time. So there are homeless people who will say, can I have $1? And if you say, I'll give you a cup of coffee, they're likely to curse you out for no reason. Now, one would think, wouldn't you be just happy for the the coffee for something to eat and drink? No, not the New York ones, because they're special. So he encounters all of these different personalities, which is unlike anything that I had to do at all. I didn't have to encounter anybody I wasn't uncomfortable with. So I went to South Africa. We went on a retreat. We went to a retreat lodge. There was a pool and like a spa and all kinds of things. And my friends were there and they went rafting and there were rhinos and we had a zoo and everybody stayed in these beautiful bungalows. And Srila Prabhupada didn't get any of that. He came and stayed in places that were infested with all kinds of beings. He came and preached this Mahamantra to people who could only understand him after they were coming down off of whatever high that they were on. Which, if you have ever spoken to somebody who was intoxicated or on drugs, is a really strange conversation to have. They're gonna answer questions that you didn't ask. Sometimes they will fall asleep mid-conversation. And what do you do? But meanwhile, Srila Prabhupada stuck with it all. And then he went to a tree in a park in New York and sat down and chanted. He did the kirtan that we are all doing today. And it is only because of that kirtan that we are able to say we belong to an entire worldwide movement. Just from one person sitting and chanting under a tree in New York, he was able to establish and begin a movement that took over the entire globe. A movement that I can truly say saved my life. A movement where I don't know who I would be without it. And he established a place and a spiritual practice that I am proud to say that I've dedicated almost 35 years to. And he did it all just because he had that faith in the orders of his spiritual teacher. And he had faith that kirtan could literally change everyone's life and the entire planet. So there were many times where he wanted to establish a worldwide kirtan party that would travel to different places and just do kirtan and just enliven people, because he saw that there was such a need for it. Every time that I gave a kirtan workshop, I started to realize the incredible need for this spiritual practice. Being able to sit and chant with others became a form of therapy that was greater than anything else I could have ever encountered. It was a place where people could safely bare their souls and unload their troubles and then find solutions, all within the scope of chanting this Hare Krishna Mahamantra. And the saying is that Srila Prabhupada built a house in which the entire world could live. And I see that every single time there's a kirtan. I see it right now. There's no other reason that we'd be having a discussion with me in New York and you all in South Africa and across the globe. And everybody tunes in and we're all here just trying to encourage each other to get through this time. And we're trying to enliven each other to continue to push past all of the barriers that our mind will come up with, all of the external circumstances that will pop up around us. We are depending on the Mahamantra as our superpower to be able to help us and get through anything. So for me, Kirtan has the power to be a prayer all by itself. It can be a calling out from the heart. It can be a love song of the soul to our supreme and divine creator and best friend. And while there are so many meanings packed into what the Mahamantra actually means word for word, my favorite, as Srila Prabhupada has always said, was, "Oh my Lord, oh energy of my Lord, please engage me in your service." Which to me also can be interpreted as, "Oh my Lord, oh my friend, just use me. Use me. Let me be of some use to you. Because I know if I can do that, that will connect me to the highest purpose and the highest meaning that I could ever have for my life and beyond." So I wanted to see now if we needed to open up for questions or anything interactive in these last minutes that we have now.
Hare Krishna. Wow. That was so beautiful.
Thank
I
you.
mean, like, it's just, I'm sitting here and thinking that we were thinking about scheduling a session. One of the sessions should be an intro to Srila Prabhupada. And somehow it didn't get there, but now you've just done that. That's brilliant.
Oh,
Thank you. So I'm looking at the questions. Well, there's one comment. Maybe, I don't know if you want to hear it. This is from G. I'm not sure who G is. One of my most important experiences with the mantra is that that whenever I make a good effort to share it with others, my own relationship with the mantra goes into the stratosphere. Maybe you want to comment on that?
that's gorgeous. And I think that it really speaks to the reciprocative nature of the Mahamantra and of Krishna himself. So the amazing thing is that the Mahamantra is non-different than Krishna. So once we begin chanting, it puts us in direct contact with Krishna. And then Krishna often says that however you approach me, I reciprocate. And that's his golden rule. He says it so many times throughout Bhagavad Gita that however we approach, that's how he will reciprocate. So if we find that we want to forget about Krishna, if we find that the process is too hard and we find ourselves turning away, all of a sudden we find that we feel less connected to Krishna. It's as though he's not there anymore, or as if he's hiding. And a big question that I've gotten recently is, if Krishna never leaves, then why does it feel like he's not there? My answer is, well, unfortunately, due to things, we often wind up having trust issues. And so we find that it's difficult for us to be able to trust this all-knowing, all-seeing, supreme being. So we have our faith tested, and then our faith gets tested and we start to turn away. Our lives were a little bit easier without having to dedicate 2 hours a day or more to this chanting and this kirtan practice. So then Krishna says, okay, I'll reciprocate. And then he begins to hide a little bit more. He gives us all the facilities that we might need to forget, all the excuses that we need to put it on the back burner and go do something else. But when we go and do the opposite, when we decide to share that kirtan and share that divine presence of Krishna with others, I feel like, yes, also, Krishna then begins to reciprocate. And then he begins to turn up his presence in our lives tenfold, which is why I definitely think that the more we share this kirtan practice, the more our own understanding and our own connection with the Mahamantra rises and fulfills us and makes us more and more grateful.
Thank you. There are a couple more questions. I'll just field them. Just a second. Okay, so this one's from Kush Singh. We often hear that there are no rules and regulations for chanting the holy name, but at the same time, we hear about kirtan etiquette. How do we understand this? What standards did Prabhupada set?
The understanding of it can actually be quite simple. For anything, even a relationship, if you are new to a practice, if you are new to a company, if you are new to a group of people, everybody's very accommodating. Come on in, just sit, hang out with us for a bit, chant. There's no hard and fast rules. Do your thing. And then the deeper we get into the company, relationship, whatever it is, we find that there are likes and dislikes. There's etiquette that needs to be followed. There's a certain set of rules and regulations, which the more we invest ourselves into a certain practice, the more we come to find out. So for me, that's kind of how I look at it. At the beginning, when you're new and you're a baby in it all, we don't put the same regulations on babies that we do on adults. But as we grow in our spiritual understanding, then we understand that there's a way to interact with people that keeps everyone's feelings and everyone's spiritual progress in mind. As for what standards Srila Prabhupada set, that kind of has to do with time, place, and circumstance. There are so many things that have evolved and have grown and changed since Srila Prabhupada began kirtan sitting with a bongo drum under a tree. So now we have all kinds of amplification. We have all kinds of instruments. We have so many different things that we can place into kirtan. Some people can feel like, oh, if Srila Prabhupada was here, maybe he wouldn't have wanted a saxophone, or if Srila Prabhupada was here, he would have wanted a violin. However, if we look at incredible recordings like the Govindam prayers, Srila Prabhupada sat, and the first time he listened to it, the devotees said there were just tears streaming down his eyes. He didn't even speak. And he spoke later and said that this is kirtan that will change the world. And then made it mandatory that all temples play it every day. So I think that we have to really look at how much of what we do is serving the kirtan and is serving Krishna, and how much of what we do is us trying to serve ourselves and our own egos. And so therein, for me, lies the boundaries of how to see etiquette and how to look at what we do in terms of kirtan standards and what is allowed and what shouldn't be allowed. Luckily, I don't have to get involved in all of that.
Yeah, I'm also glad I don't have to get involved in all of that.
Yeah.
Pranav Matabadal. Hare Krishna, how can we do kirtan without letting our ego get the better of us?
Yeah, that's tricky, isn't it? it's not always easy. There are times when I find myself in the middle of a kirtan and I'm looking around and I think, wow, I did a pretty good thing. It's usually after that thought that the whole kirtan will go south and it kind of like crumbles, it falls apart. And there are timing lapses and somehow one person's not paying attention over there and then I'm not paying attention over here. And then the whole thing kind of just collapses until I realize, oh, right, that wasn't me. that was Srinam Prabhu. And it just kind of brings me back with a bit of a lovingly forceful jolt that reminds me that I am not the doer, nor am I in control of this entire experience. I try to look at it and think, would I sing just as loud and just as enthusiastically if I was just in the crowd rather than leading a kirtan? And if I see any kind of difference, then I need to make the two match up. If the spotlight was on me, I need to make sure that whether I am singing in a room full of people or a room full of 4 people or just by myself, that I am maintaining that same level of focus and trying to call out with the same level of attention. So for me, it helps to try and not think about me, because if I give my mind an inch, it will take a whole meter, and it will use every excuse to make it about me. But if you think about it in the analogy of the holy name manifests, and the holy name can be considered a deity, but just manifested through sound. And in that regard, we are all pujaris, dressing the deity, adorning the deity, offering different articles to the deity. Now, if you went to a temple and the pujari was offering an arti, and they were offering the incense and the ghee lamp, and they decided to stand directly in front of the deity, and then they began to offer it with all kinds of flourishes and all kinds of things, you'd think, what is up with that guy? So if we think of ourselves as pujaris of the Archa Vigraha, of the holy name, if we think of ourselves as pujaris of the deity's name, then, as to say, then we have to get out of, we can't stand directly in front and expect the holy name to manifest. We have to move ourselves to the side a little bit and really allow the holy name to take precedence.
That was just so amazing. It was brilliant. It's just wow. Like, oh, I'm so glad the session's being recorded. Oh yeah, it's being recorded.
I could see that.
So we have these questions, lots of questions, but there's 2 live questions. So I'm going to take those so we can get some interaction. Is that okay?
Sure.
So Balaram has a question. Balaram, if you can unmute your mic.
Hare Krishna. Can everyone hear me?
Hey.
Haribo. Acyuta, hi. How are you?
Good to see you. I'm good.
Nice to see you as well. I was going to ask a question about the mood of performance in the kirtan, in terms of it being like a performance, but you've already touched on that. So what you just said was very heart touching. So thank you for answering that question. I have some more questions about now that the world is indoors and we can't perform Harinam Sankirtan, which is the Yuga Dharma. You know, there's Japa, which is our own practice, and then there's Kirtan, which we do with our friends. But they can't be, we can't undermine the position of Harinam, whether it's now during COVID-19 or pre-COVID-19. So my question is, what can we do? Do you have any ideas of what we can do to still propagate Harinam in that sense? And yeah, and also encourage us as youth. We love Kirtan. We like to learn how to do Kirtan in different ways, whether it's practicing instruments and like that. But also, besides the external factors of the Kirtan, it's also the internal factors of the Kirtan. So yeah.
For me, I lucked out, and my kirtan happens primarily with my family. And I also happen to be quarantined with my family. So I kind of lucked out in that regard. However, that's a question that's come up so much. What do we do? We're alone now. How are we supposed to keep the fire going? How are we supposed to keep it all going? How are we supposed to keep this alive, right? My sister said something to me months before the quarantine happened. I was talking to her and I said something about, yeah, but what happens if, I'm just chanting alone, which I'm okay with, but like, what if I'm alone? And she said, wow. She's like, I thought it was really interesting for you to be saying that. And I was like, what are you talking about? She said, well, aren't you the same person who tells everybody that they're never alone? At a certain point, if we think that we are stuck by ourselves, then we have completely forgotten the person for whom we're doing this in the first place, right? So that person is always there. In all honesty, as Srila Prabhupada said, I am never alone. He came to a place where he didn't have anybody encouraging him. He couldn't even depend on his god brothers for help, right? So he had to do everything by himself. And still he said over and over again, I'm never alone. Krishna's with me, my spiritual teacher is with me, and that keeps my encouragement going. Remembering their presence, remembering their words and their affection for me keeps me rooted and keeps me determined on the path of what I'm doing. As for how to keep everybody else and how to propagate this Harinam Sankirtan, just like anything else, if there is a will, there is a way. People have been FaceTiming their boyfriends and girlfriends and significant others and their best friends for 6 hours at a time, right? That's not an exaggeration. I've seen the timestamp, 6 hours. So if we think that I could FaceTime my best friend for 6 hours at a time, but I can't think of how to just sit and sing. It doesn't take anything more than us sitting and singing. When Srila Prabhupada started, he didn't have a harmonium. He had a bongo drum. If you have an oatmeal box, you can sing with that. You can tap on anything and you can find a reason to sing. Even if you think, but what if my voice is not as good as somebody else's? Most of our kirtan acharyas that we think of, Ayendra Prabhu, when he started, he was not a great vocalist. There were people who heard him singing at the beginning because he used to be at the New York Temple. Everything good happens in New York. And he used to be at the New York Temple, and people would leave the temple room when he would start singing. So it's only because of constantly continuing to sing and continuing to cultivate his own kirtan practice, most of which he had to do alone because he couldn't get people to sit for long periods of time and chant with him. He was able to build something which turned into a spiritual empire, something that everybody around the world is learning from. So if we remember that we are never ever alone, and if we remember that where there's a will, there's a way, there is absolutely nothing stopping us. Not now, not when quarantine is over, not ever.
Thank you so much. It was beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you, Balaram. Okay, so there is one other question. Acyuta, Acyuta, it's from Nirvana, and she asks, could you please do some kirtan? Can we hear you and chant with you? I'm just reading the question. Don't blame me.
um, as much as I would love to, I think I'm supposed to be going live at some point later. I'm really bad with scheduling things. I'm the I'm the least scheduler person ever. Um, so as for that, I'm gonna go live later. If I go live now, my family members they'll be mad at me. And I can tell them that I'm not alone all I want, but they'll still be mad at me.
Sure, we understand. Okay, last question because we have 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Radha, Radha Vinod Niranjan had a question.
Hi Krishna. Firstly, I'm so grateful for the opportunity to meet you. Well, meet you. Um, I wanted to ask, well, you inspire me a lot with your poetry to write some of my own poetry. So I wanted to know what inspires you and what advice would you give me to go deeper into my own practice and writing and kirtans.
Mm. I was a person who journaled a lot. I think ever since I was 8 or 9, I knew that I wanted to write, and I wanted to write about Krishna. Every time I read a Ramayan or a Mahabharat, I would see a picture in my head that just had more words than what was already there on the page. And there were so many different epic scenes that occurred and so many pastimes that happened. And some of them would only, because of space constraints and time, so many different descriptions would only be able to have like a line or two dedicated to them. And I always thought, that's it. So from whenever I was young, I was kind of always writing. As for sharing them publicly, I'm going to admit that that has been something that is deeply terrifying. It's one thing to write your own poetry and journal and write love letters to Krishna. It's a different thing completely to then go and say, okay, here you go, world, read it all. So I have to say that it's only really the encouragement of my spiritual master and the encouragement of my family that keeps me together through all of it. And knowing that every time I write something, there always seems to be somebody saying, me too, I'm going through that same thing too. So it is a service. It's an absolute service, and it's one that we need. Jayadvaita Maharaj is a big proponent of telling people that they should write. I heard once one of our spiritual teachers said that this is how we get culture, right? You look at history books and different cultures of the world, and all of their culture comes from the arts, dance, writing, music, all of it. And if there's no one writing our history and our experiences, what's going to be the state of our Krishna culture? So we are all kind of making history as we go along. And you should know that you bring a valuable contribution to the history of Krishna culture. Srila Prabhupada even said himself, whatever your realizations are, 2 lines, 4 lines, whatever it is, you should write it down. They are interactions that you're having with Krishna, even if you don't see it at the moment. I often find that I'll go back and look at journal entries and think, wow, I prayed for things and they actually happened. And then sometimes I forget that I even prayed for them, which means I forgot to say thank you also. So it's good to go back and read it over and look at it, because it reminds me of how much there is to be grateful for. So yes, please keep
Okay,
writing.
we have 1 minute and one burning question. Someone's like, one more, one more. Okay. Mukundangri. I also have a question, but anyway, Mukundangri.
Hey, Haribo.
What pranams. You know, as you're speaking about kirtan, something that I've been meditating on, and feeds into my chanting of Hare Krishna, whether it's through japa and kirtan, is reading. And you're a fantastic storyteller, and storytelling is one form of kirtan as well. So this is a question I often ask a lot of people, but what is your favorite Bhagavatam pastime, and who's your favorite Bhagavatam
I'm
person?
in the process of writing it into a novel.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's 2/3 of the way done. So just to let everybody know what it will be, it's the story of Usha and Aniruddha. It is my favorite Bhagavatam pastime. If you have not read it, please go read it in both Bhagavatam and Krishna book.
Cool. That was it. Thanks.
Okay, can I please ask mine?
Yes,
Please.
please.
Okay, so following from Raja's question, this question's been in my head this whole retreat, and I'm like, I'm not sure who to ask it to. There's no time, so now's the time, But I found that when I try to write something, or write something that I'm trying to realize or partially realize, Krishna, or if I put it out there with people, post it on Instagram or say it in a Bhagavatam class or something, Krishna tests me on it immediately. And like I get so smashed, I fail it instantly, and it's making me hesitant to even want to put things out
He
there.
is like that, isn't he?
I mean, am I imagining it, or should I not
No.
say anything? I don't...
Well, you're not imagining it, not at all. But the problem is, this is how Krishna deals with his friends. So it's going to happen whether you put it out there or not, just so you know. Because once you start thinking about it, right? Once you start contemplating it, then he gets the inkling, and then he goes, oh, really? So like, every time we're chanting, and please engage me in your service. He says, oh yeah? Okay, no problem, watch. And then he starts engaging us, in so many different services. Some of them that we never thought we wanted to be engaged in. And then what are we supposed to say? Yeah, no, I can't be engaged in that service. Be asking you to engage me in your service. So I think that level of courage endears Krishna to us, right? The more that he gets to test us. And even when we think we failed, right? I think that endears him to us, as though every single time we fail, he's like, right, you always needed me. I'm like, I knew that. I never said I didn't need you, but did we need to make the example so graphic, So I used to, I find that whenever I go through an intense 24-hour kirtan, or even an intense japa day, I will sit and I'm like, okay, we're just gonna do an intense day set out, and I'll make the goal 64 rounds or something like that. Immediately after that, after a 24-hour done, after any of those things, I'll get sick. It's a stomach virus, sometimes it's a flu, sometimes, but whatever it is, it's as though directly after that, not only is Krishna saying, Watch how many things you have to purify yourself from. Watch this. All the impurities are going to come out. Not only is he saying that, but he's also saying, watch, and you're not in control of anything. You're not even in control of your body. Watch this. So, but I can't think that just because that happens, I can't hold myself back from chanting and sharing and writing, even if I wanted to. So sometimes I find that I've put out something that was really deep within my heart, and then I'll look and it gets like 2 likes or something. And I'm like, really? Guys, I spent a really long time on this. Nobody sees how deep this was for me. And then I think to myself, maybe I should just keep it to myself next time, you know? I don't have to put it out there for everybody. It doesn't have to be a big thing. And then Krishna reminds me that I couldn't really hold it back. I couldn't hold back how I feel about him, how I feel about Kirtan, how I feel about my spirituality. I couldn't hold it back even if I wanted to. So it just gives me a little bit more confidence to be courageous, even though I know that the purification is coming.
Thank you so much. I'm
Was
so
my
grateful that
pleasure.
we managed to rope the session in at last minute. It's definitely, by the way everybody flooded in within the first 5 minutes, I can tell they've been eager to be with you and spend time with you.
Oh, I'm so
And
glad.
I hope we can arrange maybe after the retreat, maybe for some individual sessions at some point,
Yeah.
if this lockdown continues, you know, we'd really love to. There was a note, if you could please send a link for the online kirtan. We could probably share it with some people because it seems they want to join.
I will.
Yeah, so from my side, thank you so much. From Bhakti Yoga Dublin.
Thank you so much. Such a good time I had.
Us too. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, everybody. So the next session will be with Urmila Prabhu, and it will be at 8:30, and she's going to be talking about making plans and goal setting. So yeah, it's the last leg, so join us there. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Whoa.
Hari Hari.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna, thank you.
Thank you.